This is the creation guide for the Mage in Baldur's Gate 1. Mages, on one hand, seem like the squishiest and weakest class, and at level 1, they are. Yes, they can get some pretty cool spells right at the beginning of the game. However, there are several level 1 spells that are really quite powerful, even into Baldur's Gate 2 and beyond. However, they only have 4 to 6 HP. They have no access to armor, so one hit will kill them, and trust me, if someone targets them, they have a pretty good chance of getting hit. On the other hand, there are a lot of spells that can be cast that greatly increase their power and their durability in combat, and can even make them the tankiest class in the game. Wizards have the capability of being complete powerhouses. However, they have to survive the early game long enough in order to get to that point. This is going to be a big challenge, and the objective of any mage is to gain as much experience as quickly as possible. As with divine spells, there are a number of guides out there to different arcane wizard spells that can be learned throughout the game. So I'm not going to go too deep into all of the spells with this guide. This is just a short guide to get you started on creating your mage. But I will give some insight as to a few different early game options here. Mages have to learn their spells from scrolls, which only them and bards have to do. This does limit their availability of spells, but it allows them to use the large number of scrolls that are found all over the game. For alignment, just like fighters and clerics, mages can be any alignment. For abilities, as a mage, you're going to be prioritizing intelligence, since it connects to the likelihood that you are to learn new spells and the number of spells that you can actually learn. Mages also benefit from survivability, so you want to put points into constitution and dexterity, just like everybody. You can also prioritize charisma next, in order to get good prices and to have good interactions with others. And there is a usefulness in putting points into wisdom. Wisdom can be useful for a level 9 spell called Wish. And there are lots of veterans who actually create wizards that have a high intelligence and a high wisdom to get the best benefits out of those wish spells. Strength is not super useful, especially since your whole goal is not to get into melee combat. If you're using your weapon, it means that something's gone wrong. You have party members there that can actually do all that for you. So my advice is just rely on your party members to do the heavy lifting and to do the heavy hitting. For weapon proficiencies, our mage can go with staffs, daggers, slings, or darts. They're not great options, but it's not the wizard's job to be actually using their weapon. As mentioned, if you're using your weapon as a mage, something's gone wrong. Or you're just early in the game and you don't have that many options as far as spells go. So your mileage might vary, but I recommend choosing daggers, just because a mage can switch to either throwing daggers and just toss daggers and keep their distance, or they can switch to melee daggers if somebody comes up to them, or if they need to take out somebody who's incapacitated. There's other weapon proficiencies we can pick up later on. The game starts you off with a quarterstaff, and I know that some players pick a quarterstaff because of the traditional vision of a wizard with his staff. I don't think it's a terrible idea, but again, your whole point is not to use the staff unless the enemy is down and out and you can just wail on them as much as possible. For spells, a wizard's going to get 2 spells learned at the beginning of the game. And again, I can do a big breakdown as to what spells are great and which are absolute crap, but there are lots of spells that you should totally try, and there are lots of spells you should totally avoid. One thing that you should avoid are spells that you can find a lot of early on, right? A really good example of this is Magic Missile. Magic Missile, on paper, is great. And in fact, it is actually a pretty good spell. But there's 2 reasons to avoid it right here. One, is that at level 1, it only does one little dart of magic, and that's nice for interrupting, and it's nice for taking out gibberlings, but that's about it. It's not going to do that much. At levels 3, 4, 5, and beyond, it's nice and powerful because it shoots 2, 3, 4, 5 darts, and that's pretty nice little amounts of damage, right? The other reason why is there's a ton of magic missile scrolls all over the world. So you just pick up magic missile from the world and you learn it that way. Likewise, if you play as a mage, you may want to pick up a spell that you only can cast a few times, or where scrolls of those are particularly rare or hard to find. A really good option is a spell called Find Familiar. You find the familiar and you talk to it, and you basically just put him in your pack. When you put him in your pack, the critter's not going to move, right? He'll just hang out in your pack, and he will add to your HP. So it gives a little bit of survivability while also being an early game spell that you can cast. The only time you will find one out in the world is like a few chapters in. So you want to make sure you can find it early on and just cast it right away. For other spells, you want to find spells that are that can scale well. Avoid spells that rely on a melee attack, things like Shock and Grasp or Chill Touch. I don't find those to be very useful. It's really dangerous to be putting your mage in melee combat and just swinging your fists around, right? You're not a monk, and it's a really dangerous thing to do. When you do play, under normal circumstances, you may want to have multiple castings of the same spell. Those are kind of acting as like ammunition, right? A really good level 1 spell, for example, is Sleep. Sleep is fantastic. It puts a ton of your opponents to sleep, right? If you have 2 or 3 castings of that, then you'll run into different groups in the wild, you'll cast those, and then you'll send your melee fighters, and maybe even yourself, right, to just hit your opponents with sticks while they're snoozing. So I'll be putting together a playthrough of a mage soon, but until then, feel free to check out my other starter guides for Baldur's Gate, or check out my playthroughs of Fighter and Thief and the Cleric and others that I've made. Feel free to comment, subscribe, tell your friends. For now, take care and good luck. We're all counting on you.